Reports indicate that Speaker Pelosi will include a stop to Taiwan as a part of her current itinerary in Asia. Now, this comes despite stern warnings from the Chinese Communist Party that such a visit would lead to, quote, very serious developments and consequences, end quote. Is this saber rattling on behalf of China? Of course, as I talked about at the top of the program, Russia also making some noise toward the United States. Do they perceive weakness, and are they coordinating their efforts to push back on America? Well, joining me now to talk about this and more is Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, retired after 36 and a half years in the United States Army, founding member of the elite Delta Force, and he's the Executive Vice President of the Family Research Council. General, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Tony. I'm glad to be with you.
All right, before we get into Taiwan and Russia, I just got this notification. The president will be speaking tonight following what the White House says was a successful counterterrorism operation on an al-Qaeda target in Afghanistan over the weekend. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, I've heard only about what you have, but it appears that it's Ayman al-Zawahiri, who is the head of al-Qaeda. He is the one that was the number 2 man until bin Laden was killed, and then he stepped in and took over the leadership of al-Qaeda. So this is big. If they killed Zawahiri, this is a big deal, and the president and his administration and the DOD and CIA deserve a lot of credit here.
So is this cutting the head off the snake? I mean, what will be the impact upon al-Qaeda?
No, the theology lives on. You can't kill one man and shut down a terror network like this. There's a theology here that is subscribed to by millions of Muslims around the world. It's a jihadist theology, and the propaganda that the network has espoused for probably almost 2 decades now is one that has taken roots throughout the Islamic world, and there are a lot of people who subscribe to that. So you can't stop that just by killing one man that considers himself to be the leader.
But you set it back in terms of operationally.
No question you set it back. No question you demoralized them. But it didn't stop them when we killed bin Laden, and it's not going to stop us from killing Zawahiri, but it is going to have an impact on them, certainly in the short term. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens now. Will they combine forces with ISIS, or will they choose a new leader from within the ranks of al-Qaeda, or what will they do now? It's going to be an interesting thing to watch.
So what does this say about the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan? I mean, was that the our catastrophic withdrawal? Is that what, does this in any way make up for that?
No. Oh, no, definitely not. That stands on its own. What we did and failed to do in Afghanistan is a standalone issue. And I think it will go down in history as being one of the most poorly run operations that our military has ever been in, and our State Department as well. That was a really bad thing that we did there when we left people behind. There's an ethos here. There's a morality here associated with this, and we left people behind in Afghanistan that we had told we would bring out. So aside from the fact that we lost 13 people, that we did a terrible job, we left people behind. We breached a long-standing code of ethics for American military and American government as far as I am concerned.
So with this successful attack on the head of al-Qaeda, does this bolster our military and the standing of this administration internationally? I mean, when we're looking at this, pushback from China with this reported visit of Speaker Pelosi to Taiwan, and then Russia, President Putin pounding his chest over there yesterday. I mean, I think my take is they perceive weakness, and I think they're coordinating their efforts to try to back the U.S. into a corner. That's my take, but I want to know what yours is.
Well, first of all, there is no question, and it's not just you and I that are saying this. There's no question they see weakness. I mean, what have we done? It's not just the way we came out of Afghanistan. It's the fact that we canceled our own pipeline and then turned around and asked the Russians to pump more through theirs. We lifted the sanctions on it. We asked the Russians to intervene and be our interlocutor for negotiations on a new JCPOA with Iran. We have done so many foolish things, to include they watch what's happening to our military. They watch how we're kicking people out of the military because they won't take the vaccination. They're watching how we are not focusing on military readiness to win wars. We're focusing on being woke, and they are laughing at us. But more importantly, they see our weakness. I do not believe that if Joe Biden keeps on talking about escalation in the Ukraine, as well as in the Taiwan situation, I don't think there's going to be a good outcome of that, because we're not the ones that are escalating. The Chinese and the Russians can de-escalate these situations in a moment's notice. But Biden keeps talking about he doesn't want to do certain things because they're provocative or because they are escalatory. Well, why don't we do what's right by our own people as well as our allies and the rest of the world, and put them on the side where they have to start thinking about how to de-escalate the situation.
So in your view, should Nancy Pelosi go forward with her visit to Taiwan?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No question about it. And that's an easy one. And it's not just, I'll tell you what I'm worried about, Tony, and what really concerns me about this is who leaked it. That is a bigger issue as far as I'm concerned. Who leaked it? Because when you look what was leaked out of the Supreme Court over the Dobbs case there, and now you see this being leaked, who's leaking it? Now, there's speculation that came out of the White House because they want to put pressure on her to not to go. Well, I don't know whether that's true or not, but what I do know is that's a national security issue, that she's the Speaker of the House. She's the third one in line for the presidency. And we had a leak that if the Chinese really wanted to do something bad, they could take her airplane down or do something like that, or interdict her at any point in this trip. And I think that we ought to be focusing very heavily now on not whether she's going or not. I hope she goes, and she should go. But who leaked this, and what was the purpose behind this leak? And they need to be held accountable. Nobody's been held accountable for what was leaked out of the Supreme Court.
Yeah. If the Chinese take any action to try to block her flight or intercept her in some way, should the U.S. respond?
Well, I think they should. I think the U.S. absolutely should. In fact, if we know what plane she's going down there with, we ought to fly escort. We ought to have escorts on the wings of the plane that takes her in there, and make no doubt about it that we have the resolve. We've got to show strength. We've got to show something. Yeah. I think this taking out Ayman al-Zawahiri is a really good thing. And yes, I think it's going to give the president a little boost, but there's nothing he could do at this point that I think that would put him back in the, above abysmal in terms of his ratings. But I do think that we've got to show a lot more resolve than we have. We've got to show a lot more strength, courage. And that's what the Russians and the Chinese are seeing in us. Look, I don't want to keep going back to this, but I don't think you'd see this if the last president was still in office, because he took a much more affirmative stance towards the Chinese as well as the Russians. And he made it very clear that they were going to provoke us to do things that were going to be catastrophic for them. And now we're worried about whether we're escalating or whether we're provoking. And I think that's nonsense.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. We need to show strength, show resolve, because, I think they're picking on us. I mean, well, I shouldn't say picking on us, they're taking advantage of us, but you think of muggers and thugs, they pick on weaklings. They don't pick on people who are holding themselves well and able to defend themselves. And unfortunately, I think that is what this administration is communicating. Now, I want to go to Russia because yesterday was Navy Day in Russia, and President Vladimir Putin signed a new naval doctrine that cast the United States as Russia's main rival. Now, what does that say about Russia's ambitions and their strategic aims?
Well, first of all, there's nothing new about that. I mean, we lived through 40 years of the Cold War where we each knew that we were the main opponent for the other. So there's nothing new about this. But look, I think that what you're seeing here with both Vladimir Putin and President Xi is you're seeing a couple of men that have some clearly political ambitions beyond what's obvious. And I think that Xi is in fact hoping to be reelected in this 5-year meeting that's coming up in October, November, and Putin is just trying to stay in office. He's just trying to hold on, and I think that they are poking fun at us. They are using us for their own political purposes, and we're playing right into their hands. We're not doing anything to push back on that, and it is time again for not only our rhetoric, but our actions to show a real resolve that we're not going to do this. We're not going to put up with this. And look, we've got people being held in Russian prisons right now. And I don't know enough about those two to know what they're guilty of. But I can tell you, if you go back to when the president sent you over to Turkey to get Andrew Brunson, who had a missionary that had been held there for 2 years, that showed resolve, not just to the Turks, but it showed resolve to the whole world. I mean, people were watching that, and we need to show that same level of resolve right now.
But in order to show that resolve, you have to have a military that can actually back it up. I mean, you can't just claim you have a strong military, you have to show it. And you touched on this a few moments ago, in that what our military is focused on is anything but preparing to fight and win wars. They have been immersed in this woke agenda, having drag queen performances on military bases. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I think that when China, Russia sees this, I think they're just applauding because they know you can't win wars this way.
Yeah, I think this administration up front, right at the beginning, they sold out to the climate change advocates as well as the LGBT people that they just sold out to them. And now so much of what happens in our whole country, but especially in our military, is driven by those two agendas. And when you have 4-star generals standing up saying our greatest threat is climate change, really? Seriously, look at the world we live in and tell me you seriously believe that. Or when these 4 stars.
Let me ask you that question. Do they believe that, or are they just saying it because they have to?
That's it. I don't believe that a single one of them believes that climate change is the greatest threat to America. They are parroting what they have been told by the commander in chief. You know what? Now would be a good time for some of them to walk in, lay their stars on the table, and say, I will no longer be part of this kind of nonsense.
But, General, what you're saying is that our military leadership has been hollowed out. Because I'm speaking as a former enlisted man who looked up to the officers to provide the direction and the guidance at the highest. You're talking about the highest levels. How can our men and women who serve in uniform on the front lines have confidence in that type of leadership?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, because they don't. They can't have competence in a chain of command that bullies them, literally bullies them, to take a vaccination that they don't want, or that throws them out when they are unwilling to take it, or a chain of command that has them use their precious training time when they should be preparing for war, sitting in a classroom, listening to someone as they divide that room up and say, all of you on this side are oppressors and all of you on this side are the oppressed. It's called critical race theory. And they're doing that. And especially if you're in the National Guard or the reserves and you only get 1 weekend a month to train and you spend that entire weekend doing something like that, which does nothing but destroy the cohesion of any organization. And that is, as I have said before on your program, that's the equalizer on the battlefield.
Yeah. And the only way to correct that, if I'm not mistaken, you correct me if I'm wrong, is an election. To have someone who understands the purpose of the military and is willing to undo this foolishness and get our military back on track. Last word from you.
It's not just the vote for the commander in chief or the president of the United States. We need to start at the ballot box with elected representatives, House and Senate, that care about our military and are willing to do the right thing with regards to our military, because those people can do a lot.
General, we got to leave it there. Always great to have you on the program. Good to see you.